Hey, Rootstein fans, I am so excited to, first of all, have this live interview, but with someone who's very special. He's in a very, very small group of people who've ever had a Rootstein mannequin made in a likeness, and even more rare, a male mannequin, because there weren't nearly as many male mannequins produced as there were female. So this is Hadrian Tuck. Say hello, Hadrian.
Hi, everybody. How are you?
Hadrian, what year were you made into a mannequin?
Oh, I would say probably 1990, somewhere around there.
Okay. And I just have a bunch of random questions. What happened was you reached out to me on Instagram or Facebook, right?
I think Facebook, yes.
And what made you find me? Or because you made such a nice comment, I said, I've got to talk to this guy.
Well, once in a while, you start remembering your past and you wonder what happened to certain things that you did in your career. So I thought, well, let's see what's going on with my mannequin. And one of the reasons I did that is I watched this show called American Pickers sometimes, and they had one episode which had the guy with the world's largest collection of mannequins. And I watched it to see if my one would show up. And sure enough, in his warehouse, it showed a panning of that. There was my mannequin right
Oh,
there.
so
So I
yeah.
thought, well, that's interesting. So it prompted me to kind of like dig around a little bit and see what's out there, and especially on sites like yours and resale sites and things like that. And a few of them popped up. I think somebody answered me back one day to say, I'm a unicorn," which I thought was pretty charming.
And then when you sent me the email, I just thought, oh, wow. I don't really think about where the Rootstein Manning or models are nowadays. So it was really great to be able to see that. So it just sparked something because I'm getting ready to put out a ebook talking about the legacy of Adel Rootstein mannequins, which are one of my favorite brands of mannequins. And I thought this would be
Right.
a tradition to have to really see what that experience is like. So I'm hearing a little bit of a British accent. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yes.
Oh,
My agency was in Chelsea, London, which was literally 3 or 4 blocks away from the Rootstein showroom.
yeah. Well, tell us of the process. How did you get selected?
Well, my booker at the time, can I say names on your
Oh, sure, sure, yeah.
yeah. Alison Braithwaite. You might want to look her up. She lives in Florida now, funny enough. And she was very well connected with Rootstein. So some of the information that you've been asking me, she may well have for you.
Okay. And you're in Florida right now too, right?
Yeah, I'm in Miami.
Okay. We'll get to your transition a little bit. So anyway, somehow
Yep.
Allison, she said, hey, here's a great opportunity to be made into a mannequin.
Yeah, she sent me along and I met Len Gifford and we started talking about engineering because that was my original background. And he was a civil engineer, a bridge designer as part of
Interrupt.
his early career.
Lynn Gifford was one of the other sculptors on the routine staff. Many people
Right.
Taylor, but Lynn Gifford was also a very popular sculptor for that she used him as well.
Right. So, we hit it off talking about other stuff other than fashion and mannequins, etc. So he said, you know what, I'm booking you. So we got along so well that he booked me for the whole series, which is unusual because usually, each series would have, 3 or 4 different models. I think there was only 2 on the Loverboy series.
Yes, let's refresh. So you were on the Loverboy series, and what other one?
Locker Room.
Locker Room. Okay. And in each of those series, are you in various poses?
Yeah, I think we did 4 poses in total. The first one was the one where I'm draped over the female mannequin.
Versus,
It wasn't live. They had one already made, so I was draped over the mannequin itself in
yeah.
order to sculpt my pose. And then there was various other poses, a sitting pose, a like a workout type of pose, and I think there were 2 different type of workout poses, if I remember rightly.
And I'm going to include the link on the bottom here to our Pinterest board, which has all the different poses from that collection, so they can see.
Right.
All right. I don't know if you remember. I know it's been a while since you've probably been remembering this. So it's like, what collection was that? So tell me what happens. They say you're gonna book, you get booked. First of all, do you remember what you got paid?
It paid me enough money to get my working visa for the United States. That's all I remember. The actual monetary figure, I couldn't really tell you.
What is like equivalent of what you would get as a daily rate as a model doing clothing?
Back then, you would probably make £1,000 a day, which doesn't sound like a lot today, but it was very reasonable back then. But then you don't work every day.
Gotcha. Okay. All
You know,
right.
sometimes you may have a few days or even weeks without anything going on. And if you do the fashion shows, you'd hardly get paid at all for those. It's all about exposure. If you can do like two shows a day or something like that, you're doing okay.
This thing, you got both. You got both exposure and well paid, right?
Right.
And I understand correctly. While we're just talking about compensation, let's finish that. You, after, in addition to getting paid, you get like a bust of yourself or a sculpture of yourself.
Yeah, I mean, it's by request, really. Len was, sculpting my head as a separate thing to the body. And I said, well, I'd love to have one of those. He goes, well, yeah, we can do one for you and we can cast it in any material. So they cast it in a resin with iron filings in it. So it had this nice rusted
Nice.
look to it. Yeah. And to be honest with you, I got no idea whatever became of it.
That was my question. Like, I thought you'd pull it out and show it to.
I would like to still have it. So if anybody out there has it, I don't know how I lost possession of it. I thought I gave it to my mother, but she doesn't seem to have it. If anybody sees a bust of my head, that's me. we can talk.
You walk into the sculpting studio. Talk about that process.
Their sculpting studios was upstairs, so you'd enter through the showroom and you go upstairs, and it's a typical artist studio environment. They've got the construction room where they do the arbors and everything, and all the clays, and then they got another room where they're molding all the mannequins and filing down all the fiberglass ends and everything like that, and making them look pretty.
But did it smell like fiberglassy painting?
Yeah, it's I'm a boater, so I know how fiberglass smells, and it's that same kind of boat manufacturer's smell.
Okay, all right. And then you walk in. First of all, did you have to do any advanced preparation? Like, did you starve yourself for a week so that?
Really, no. I was already very lean back then because I was obviously working every day as a model, so I was naturally lean, and I didn't even work out. Just so much walking in London and in Europe that keeps you naturally fit. So it was just a case of showing up, and I believe we would do maybe 3 or 4 hours at a time, 4 days a week.
4 days a week.
Right. So, and it would take about, I think 3 weeks to finish one mannequin.
Okay.
And then they wanted to book me for the other ones in the series. So it was a case of, scheduling the time when I wasn't working on other things. So I believe over maybe a 1 year period, maybe a little less, we made the whole series.
Wow, amazing. And were you clothed or in a little swimsuit or have a towel over you?
In my British style underpants,
Okay.
which briefs.
Literally just standing there holding the pose like Madonna would say for just hours on end.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you take a break, and of course, the sculptor Len would he'd pretty much know what your pose is, so he can get you to hold the pose for like 10-15 minutes while he just sets something up, and then you can pretty much relax while he's putting in the details until he asks you to get back in the pose because he's missed a detail or something like that.
And who decided the pose?
Actually, we worked it out together. That you have to have a pose that's easily dressed.
Yeah.
You can't be in some sort of contortion where there's no way you can get clothing on the person. So we tried a lot of different poses, and he says, okay, well, the arm can come off there, the leg can come off there, so we can clothe it and then put it all back together again. So we worked it out together, but it was fun.
Is he marking you up in any way? Because I know some of those locker room poses are pretty dramatic. There's one where your legs are kind of spread apart and like
that was a hard one to maintain.
Yeah, that's what I said. Does he put any markings, anything in you, like the arm?
I don't know if maybe they mark the floor or something, so when I reposition, they would I would know where to stand.
Gotcha.
But I think if you're in the general pose, there's a little bit of artistic license there where, maybe your belly isn't as flat as it could be in a particular pose. And obviously, they'll make that look better on the actual mannequin.
That was my next question. I understand that at least for the women, sometimes they'll embellish. Their legs are a little bit longer than they really are.
Right.
The embellishment with you as well. Or do you feel like it was pretty true to size?
I think it was fairly true to size. Obviously, a mannequin doesn't look anything like the real person because it's so smooth and flawless. But I would say, yeah, it was a good representation, and I think the head was as well. You know,
Gotcha.
compared to what I used to look like 30 something years ago.
So what happened with the big unveil? And I understand that they usually have these huge parties where they would, unveil the latest collection and the buyers would be brought in. Is that what happened with you?
Yeah, yeah, they had like an open evening or something like that for the buyers, and you meet everybody and shake hands. I was a young model. I wasn't as good as networking back then as I am today. So you're a little bit like a fish out of water when you're meeting all those people. But
Everybody staring at you. What was it like when you first saw your likeness first just in the studio and then when you saw it in a window?
in the studio, it was just all part of the work. It's when I saw it fully clothed in some store windows. But the first one I saw was the one with my legs kind of like spread, and that was on in Carnaby Street in a clothing store. So I had a snapshot of it at some point because I had a little box camera back then. But like I said, a lot of things have gone missing along the way, moving to the US and
Like they are now.
getting, getting into different things.
Yeah, exactly. Did you feel a sense of pride? Did you feel a little awkward? Just were you
No, you feel a sense of personal pride, but it's not like you can go grab the nearest person on the street and say, "Hey, that's me in the window."
now, did you get a chance to meet
My
Adele?
mother would. My mother would, though. She would tell
I'm
people
sure
that's my son.
she would. Did you get a chance
Yeah,
Adele herself?
yeah. I met her a couple of times, and of course, at the open evening, it was basically a "hello, how are you" kind of situation. But like I said, Alison may have had more of a personal relationship with Adele because she was my booker and been in the industry many years.
Are you still in
Um,
contact with her?
yeah, in on Facebook, I can try and put you two together. Perhaps you can ask her a couple of questions. I'll prime her first. I'll send her a message.
Perfect. Thank you. What
Yeah.
about contact with any other Rootstein models?
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, I really didn't get to meet the other models too much because you're in the studio by yourself.
I didn't know if
It's like,
reunions or some sort of little party or when they did the unveiling. I guess when they do the unveiling, there's not a lot of men. It's usually like one man for every.
right, right. And like I said, I probably missed out on a lot of things that they did after that because obviously I'd be traveling. I'd be in Japan for 6 months, or I lived in Paris for a while. I lived in Milan for a while. So you're off the beaten track as
Yeah.
far as London goes. So I've missed quite a lot of London work, but um, I'm not disappointed because I really enjoyed living in Europe.
And then what made you get out of the modeling industry? Is that what I'm understanding? You're out of modeling or you were seeing?
Oh yeah, I came to Miami to work to do the catalog work because it pays quite well, but it was right after Hurricane Andrew, so a lot of the photographers were shooting in California or even other states, so there wasn't that much work here. But I persevered and I just got tired of it. Like I said, I have an engineering background before I fell into modeling. So it's sometimes I met a lot of good people, but a lot of the people that are making decisions, sometimes they don't see you as a person. And it gets kind of flaky. So I was a little bit tired of that, tired of the traveling. And, I met my first wife in Miami. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to make a change in life right now. So I did. And I actually got into the insurance business. And I ended up opening an agency in '98, which is still in business. And we specialize in marine insurance, cargo, vessels, etc.
You couldn't be more far away from fashion and
No, no. It's funny because with Facebook, you get reconnected with people when that first came about. So people came out the woodwork, hey, where you been? You've been on the missing list. We miss you and everything like that. And a friend of mine, photographer Rodney, that I met in Milan, and also spent time with in Miami when I first got here, we reconnected. So he came to Miami and we did a couple of shoots about 7 years ago, which were really good. And a friend of his, or friend of ours actually, she owns Motives Cosmetics, and she has a big house in Miami. So we did their campaign there. I was the guy in the campaign, and they had a huge event at the Miami Airlines Arena. At least that's what it's called at the time. So everybody was recognizing me as the Havana Nights guy. So that was kind of nice. So, I decided to get involved with an agency again. But, in conjunction with me running a successful business, to get called out on castings for a $150 job didn't make any sense. I'm like, well, if this is the way the industry is now, it's cool taking pictures, and I like the art in them. But as an industry nowadays, yeah, it's not that fruitful. So I decided to go back to my barbecues and hamburgers and live my life the way I want to live it.
People recognize you as the Havana Nights guy. Does anyone recognize you as the Rootstein Mannequin guy?
No, there's too many years. Obviously, when you see a mannequin in the window, you don't know who that person is or how it's made or what goes into it. It's just a clothes horse for the window.
And most people don't even think that there was a made on the likeness of a real person, because so many of the mannequins now are just kind of more factory doll-like produced versus that.
Right.
You could really see the personality of the person behind it. And Adele seemed to have such a knack at picking the right people, usually just maybe a little bit before they really burst on the scene, like tweaking, things like that. Did you feel like, did your bookings take a boost after being a Rootstein mannequin? Because I heard it was quite prestigious to be a Rootstein model.
Maybe if I'd have stayed in London for a bit, we could have had the mannequin in my portfolio and everything like that. But traveling and things, Japan was impressed with it, I suppose. But I don't know if it really had much to do with my career. I mean, I wouldn't have called myself an A-list model by any stretch of the imagination. So once you become a name, you become in high demand and you get the high pay. So I think I did a lot of good work, but I'd call myself a B-lister.
Yeah, well, I think it really weren't that many males that really got the A-list status, would you say? Could you think?
Well, there was White Richards. He was like the first male supermodel. There was Marcus Schenk. These are all friends of mine. Marcus Schenkenberg, Steve Lyons,
Were any
Cameron.
of these Rootstein people?
I don't know if they did one of Cameron. It was usually London guys that were the Rootstein models, unless I know Rootstein had a studio in New York. I'm sure they must have had some American guys up there, but I wouldn't know who they are.
It's not like the many of the women, became superstars, but like I said, mannequins are still, or models still not as well represented.
Yeah, I suppose so. I really didn't think about it at the time. It was just a cool thing to do.
And was it prestigious? Did you feel like, I've got a feather in my cap, I've been made into a...
Yeah, it's definitely a feather in the cap, because like I say, when you go to a Bloomingdale's or Macy's or something like that, you're looking at the displays, and you're kind of looking around the store for yourself. Most often you wouldn't find them, but it was kind of cool, the days that I'd run across my likeness.
And
or even somebody else that I know a friend of mine, Robbie, did a part of the locker room. He was the head on most of the locker room series, and you used to see him a lot in like Macy's and stuff, where they have the sportswear and things like that. But his mannequin was more stylized. It was all white.
Gotcha. Okay, because yours was more realistic, wasn't it? Aren't there two versions of you? One more stylized and one with realistic and hair?
No, I mean, I know they've used my head on various other mannequins, so they mix and match a little bit.
Okay.
But no, it was all natural skin tones and nothing too modern.
Was there ever a headless version of you? Do you know?
There's a what?
Headless version.
A headless? Not that I know of. I think it's probably a choice of whoever buys the mannequin, whether they want it with or without a head.
I don't know whether that was like, that's my body, but it either has the sculpted head, or there's one with the realistic.
Yeah, I guess I've got to the stage where I pointed something out, that's my body in that mannequin. They're like, yeah, right. Especially if it's any of my kids.
Yes. Do you have at least a catalog of your?
Yeah, I have a catalog somewhere. I've got all my portfolio, my old index cards, and I think I've got a couple of Rootstein catalogs tucked away in there. I haven't looked at them in years.
What's interesting, here you are one of the models and you're just kind of like, come see, come saw. And these collectors, you're a collector's item because first of all,
Yeah,
weren't that many men. And then so many times the mannequins got destroyed when the stores were like, oh, this is last year's style, or we're going a different direction. And they would just throw the mannequins in the trash. That's where companies
right,
like came involved, like, no, these are treasures, besides the fact that it's a historical value, but the artistry of them, and they could be
right.
other kind of
And
ways.
they're all handmade. They're not like, I mean, I've seen documentaries on making mannequins where they basically cover you in rubber, peel it off, and then cast you,
Yes.
with straws up your nose and stuff like that. So that's just manufacturing. Rootstein was definitely like an artist's interpretation of what a
Yeah.
mannequin could look like.
For many of the people who are probably listening to this are some of those collectors who, yes, we treasure Rootstein mannequins. I mean, I don't know who this guy was you saw on the television show and how many mannequins he's have. I'd love to try to find him, but there are a lot of
Well, yeah, I'll see if I can look at it. The show's American Pickers, and the episode had the world's largest collection of mannequins. So whether you can
US. Do you
pull
know,
that up on demand or anything like that.
was he in the US?
Oh yes, yes,
All
yeah.
right.
This guy with the largest collection, he owns like a camera and processing store, and downstairs in his basement, he's got this massive collection of mannequins.
I can't wait to find him. Well, I'm sure some of the people who are part of the Facebook group where we've discovered each other, the vintage mannequins, a lot of them have large collections of mannequins too. I know one person, he has probably 100 mannequins just in his home, and one of them is yours.
Oh,
Okay.
lovely. I'd like to see how he's dressed.
I remember, I think I put together a list of the top 10 Rootstein mannequins that people want to collect, both male and female. And I'm pretty sure you're on that, Hadrian. I'd have to go back and look
Well, that
because
makes me feel special.
also because you have the distinction of being posed with Mercy, with the female mannequin.
Right,
And there
right,
are many mannequins, period, where you saw the interaction of the male and female together. And that was
right.
something unique for that era. So that also gives you a different distinction.
I've seen myself draped on a male model as well.
Really? So you go any direction, huh? Whatever.
Well, yeah, one of the people that came back to me showed me his collection, and it was obviously I was wearing like sequin pants and some sort of string vest, and I was draped over this other chap with some gold pants on or something. So
I think I may know that picture because I think I
yeah,
reported that for Gay Pride. Well,
maybe.
yeah. Okay, interesting. All right. Well, let's see. I'm trying to think if there was any other questions. People had sent me some questions that they wanted to ask, and people definitely wanted to know, like, do you have a mannequin in your home? But it sounds like you don't have any kind of.
I do not, if one ever came my way, I would probably display it, even though I'd probably get some criticism for being so cheesy, but it would be kind of cool to have one.
So if anybody out there has Hadrian, get in touch with him. Okay, you can find him directly through me, or you're on Facebook, right?
Yes, I am.
You should have your own. Now,
And Instagram, yeah.
it's sort of like a Dorian Gray, though, when you look at that, right? Like, wow, that was me at a certain specific moment in time.
Yeah, I mean, listen, we all go through things in our life and we reflect on our past a lot, depending how you're feeling at that moment. So yeah, I've done my reflection times, and I've looked at it, whether it be the mannequins or pictures of myself, and I'm like, wow, what happened? But you get over it, and I suppose when you look how you looked 30 years ago, if you can put some pride in yourself in your 50s, you work at being the best version of yourself.
Well, I say you still got it. If Rootstein is still producing male, they re-released Twiggy, and I believe they re-released Yasmin Laban. I think they should re-release some of the popular male mannequins, and you'd be high on the list.
That'll be fun. I'll fly over to London for an unveiling.
I think they actually do it in Italy now. Do you keep it in contact at all with any Rootstein representatives, or that just
No, not at all. No, really, hardly anybody in the modeling industry. A few photographers that I've remained friends with, and a few of my fellow models from back in the day. We stay in contact, but that's about it. As far as agencies or anything like that, I really don't have a lot of interest. I've moved on a lot.
Hey, one second, Eric, it's on the crafting table out there because I was putting something in the car. A little intermission there. Let's see. Anything you want to add, Adrian? Adrian, about just anything, the experience, specifically about being the model for Rootstein, not just your modeling career, but anything about the company or just what the experience is like?
Well, it was definitely a very well-run company. Kevin was the art director,
Kevin Art.
and he was very involved with, coming in and checking on the poses, and bringing in outfits to wear to look to see what looked good, and how you would put me in a pose and see if they can get the clothes on me somehow to try and assess how they're going to set the model up.
One last thing, was it any different? I mean, as you mentioned, as a model, many times people just see you as a product and don't see you as the individual. Did you feel the same way when you were being posed as a mannequin? That it's just, you're just here?
No, not really. Obviously, you're there for a job and you're getting paid to do a certain job, so you do what they ask you to do. I felt that I had a very good rapport with Len, so it was more than just work. We built a little friendship there, and we talk about a lot of things outside of our industries.
Okay, so
So
yeah,
that was.
so you're chatting as you're being posed. You're not just.
Oh yes, we had plenty to say to each other. It's a long time ago, but I remember quite well some of our conversations.
Oh, that all this time that you can still remember that is a beautiful thing. You guys must have had a
Yeah.
real connection, and you can just see when the sculpt that there's just such a beautiful sense of, I don't know, just humanity in there. It's not, you really can feel like lifelike.
Yeah.
That's why they're so
Right.
unique, right? And I would imagine with him having that kind of connection that there's some part of your personality that's coming through, even through the clay and through the fiberglass.
Yeah, even while he was working, especially when he's working on my head and face and things like that, he'd constantly say, "What do you think?" And I'd look it over, and I can't remember if I criticized anything in any way. Probably not my place, but maybe that nose doesn't look quite right. It doesn't feel like my nose, and he'll like look at it and work on it until he got it perfect. So it wasn't just slapping things together and hopefully it looks like you.
Oh,
He was very detailed with, muscle tone, bone, shoulders, face, nose, lips was very important to him to get that expression on the lips,
oh.
position of the ears and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, the head takes a lot more technical ability to get things looking balanced.
And that's why Rootstein mannequins are so expensive, because that level of detail that other
Right.
people do, and that's why they look so lifelike, with
Well,
that.
they want to have an expression, they have a personality.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
Yeah.
did I hear a rumor that you actually dated or were married to to a woman who was a Rootstein mannequin?
No. I'd worked with women that were Rootstein mannequins. I worked with a girl called Taxi, which I've lost contact with her, and I can't seem to find her anywhere.
With Pat Cleveland, that's just a little gossip on the side. Pat Cleveland?
No, well, her name was Taxi. That's what she used to go by as a model.
No, what I'm thinking about is Pat Cleveland. She is a model.
Right.
I thought that you had a connection with her.
No, I don't know her personally. I don't know if we ever met in the past. Maybe we spoke about doing Rootstein stuff, but I really don't remember her, and certainly didn't date her, unfortunately.
Someone gave me the impression, oh yeah, Hadrian was married to Pat Cleveland. So sorry about that. Just scratch that from the record there. Because I thought it's a fairly incestuous community there, because
Actually, I've never, obviously I dated models back in the day, but I've been married a couple of times, and none of them were models. They were,
okay.
Everyday civilians.
All right. Anything else you want to add, Hadrian?
No, I think if you ever want to follow up with me, feel free. If you've got a pending question, I'll send you Alison's information, and if I can dig up some pictures of that TV show. I know I took a couple of screenshots of the show. I'll send it to you, and if I can dig up what episode it was, that will work too.
Well, I hope this episode leads to a new opportunity for you. Like I said, I'd love to be able to see a mannequin. It's nice to be able to show like someone in their youth and somebody current. I mean, Rootstein did release a few sort of mature mannequins, particularly male, but they were widely distributed, particularly in the US. We're such a youth culture over here. And I think she led the way in having plus size mannequins and mannequins of different nationalities. And she
Right.
tried to show mannequins that are older, but the retailers weren't biting. You can't force people to buy what you produce.
It'd be
But
good to have a father-son dynamic in the collection, wouldn't it?
yeah, you could be both roles.
Right, exactly.
the, the youthful you and the current you. And how old are you now, if I can ask?
I'm 56.
You have a hard time saying that?
Um, yeah, I suppose so. I don't feel 56 physically sometimes, but mentally, I'm still the same person I was 30 years ago. Maybe
I
just a little bit more articulate, a bit more worldly, but I still think like a child quite a lot.
I mean, especially since you're in an industry that's so youth oriented, we
Yeah,
all struggle with the idea of being older. I mean, I just went to my 50th high school reunion, and in my mind, I'm 50. Not that I've been out of high school 50 years, so that's I'm
right,
67. But in my mind, I'm still thinking youthful. But at least, granted, I work with mannequins all day, and they remind me
right.
of mannequins with perfect bodies, no sags, no bags, no cellulite. Your industry was all about perfection, so I would think it's a little bit harder adjusting to civilian life.
I was, when I was actually modeling, I was in that era where they were kind of looking for a little bit of imperfection in their men. It's not like the 70s and 80s where the guys had to be very American looking and very clean. You know, when I was at a scar here and there, a broken nose. Danny Mayhew was an Adel Rootstein mannequin, and he won a competition called the Clothes Show when they were looking for male models. So that started his career with Armani and everything, and he did a Rootstein mannequin, and he's got a big scar down his face, but that's was like a signature scar
Gotcha. Okay.
for his industry. Maximo had a broken nose; it was crooked, but people loved it because it was masculine looking.
Right. But I bet their bodies were still tight.
Oh yeah, I mean you got to be. You can't be sloppy in that industry.
Yes. A little imperfection here, but yet everything else has to be just right. And as there's been a lot of criticism about the standards that mannequins have set to make particularly women feel insecure about their bodies. That's a whole different subject. We're not getting onto that, but it's just
Right,
there is a little bit more realism now with mannequins in terms of size. They
right,
still have perfect skin if they look realistic, but at least they are allowing them to be a little bit more curvy than they've been
right,
before. But mannequins are about fantasy, not reality.
right. Well, I mean, what makes the clothing look at its best in a store? And I suppose you got to go with the mannequin that's going to showcase your collection in the best possible way. I mean, if your collection is for plus size, you need plus size mannequins. If your collection is for the young and beautiful and fit and healthy, then you got to choose a mannequin
But
for that.
mannequins tend to be tall, young, thin, and typically Anglo if we're going realistic. Now,
Right.
more of a trend to go toward headless or egghead. You're not showing any kind of realism at all. And many of us really miss those days when the mannequins were really looking more realistic looking. Granted, it takes a lot
Well,
for the retailers to maintain that.
yeah. I mean, a retailer, if he owns a headless mannequin, that's going to last him for many, many years. If you got a mannequin with a head, you got to get it touched up once in a while because they get dropped while they're dressing them. Kids grab them in the store, they fall over, and all manner of things. So I suppose if you got this generic headless mannequin, it can last you a long time before you need to replace it.
That's the sad reality. But yes,
Yeah,
how do you feel
yeah,
about window displays now? Because you were during the 80s, which many people say was sort of like you were the 80s or 90s.
90s.
They say that period was kind of like the golden age of window displays, especially if you were at a place like New York or London.
Well, that's where the term supermodel came in the 90s, with the big four. And, there was obviously the three or four guys that were very big at the time, maybe not household names like the girls were, but within the industry, they were very well known. I mean, I can remember being in Japan and I thought I had a job and at an audition. And I said to my friend Flavio, I'm like, well, all we need is for Steve Lyons to walk in now just to screw us. And the elevator door opened and he walked out. Because that's the big name. So everybody's if anybody can book a big name, they will.
But that also translated to the window displays themselves. The window displays were very big and theatrical, you know, the realistic mannequins and great props to go along with it. They weren't as scaled down as they've become now.
Right, right, right. And if you were a recognizable model in not only fashion but as a household name, to be in a store window just continues to boost your name, doesn't it?
Yes, exactly, exactly. Not the case anymore. Well, everything must change. Well, Hadrian, it has been such a delight talking to you. I mean, I'm sort of starstruck, you know. You may not be famous to the world out there, but like I said, that's a very special category to have your body being deemed beautiful enough to be made into a mannequin, and then a mannequin by Adele Rootstein, who is
Right.
the goddess of, you know, mannequins. And at a time in which she was alive. I mean, they're making mannequins now, but you know, she's gone. I just feel like something about when she was there, her spirit really was like imbued
Right.
there. So you were just a very special experience at a very special time.
Yeah, yeah. I wouldn't change it for anything.
Okay, well, thank you. All right, you guys heard it right here. And this is not going to be a continual series. I just wanted to just do you because we only really need to have one. And I picked I picked the best. All right. Thank you, Adrian. I'm going to stop recording right now. Let me stop recording. But oops, I don't want to leave it. And this is my first time trying to do something like this. Hold on. Cancel, pause recording, not